Hi guys, Gene here from FireSprint. I want to take you through a quick presentation that we have about rigid PVC. So these are PVC sheets. We sell quite a few of them printed, of course. They're very common in the industry, very versatile, very easy to use. It is a great product for a number of uses. And so just want to take you through it just a little bit here. So first at FireSprint, here's our mission, vision, and values, very important to us. But for sake of time here, I'm going to keep going through this presentation about PVC. What is PVC? PVC is a rigid board of expanded closed cell polyvinyl chloride. So that's what PVC stands for, polyvinyl chloride. And it's extruded with a matte finish almost always. Every once in a while, there are some gloss finish PVCs, but most of them are fairly matte. It is directly printable. We directly print on it here at FireSprint using our UV ink. And PVC is also available in a wide variety of thicknesses, densities, sizes, and colors. In our industry, it's often formed into shapes using wood and foam board fabrication techniques. PVC is heat formable, so you can heat it up and bend it. And it is also very chemical resistant. It's really a solid product. So PVC, how it's made, I'll move myself out of the way here. It is extruded. So just like most plastic sheets, it's manufactured from pellets, and these pellets are heated up and put into a screw, and that screw forces it through a die. And kind of like that, I have the picture of the Play-Doh thing here, kind of like that Play-Doh thing that you used as a kid. It's forced through a die, except it's a big sheet-like die, and it makes it one continuous sheet. Now that sheet is trimmed square and then stacked neatly on a pallet, and that's how generally we buy it. There may be some other processes in there, but that's kind of the gist of it. They heat up the pellets and they force it through a die, and it comes out as a flat sheet. That does give the PVC a grain in the length of the extrusion. So as it's coming out, that PVC has a grain. And so it's a little bit stronger in one direction than the other. Generally, when we buy like a 4-foot by 8-foot sheet of PVC, along the 8-foot length, it's stronger. So along the longer length of the sheet, it's stronger. If you turn it and bend it, it's a little weaker. And so that's something to consider if you're making a sign that's spanning a gap or anything like that. Some of the common industry names for PVC, and there are others, but all these guys are either in the U.S. or Europe, I believe they're made. But again, PVC is short for polyvinyl chloride. But at FireSprint here, we refer to PVC simply as the size and the gauge or the thickness of the PVC when we reference it. For example, 3 millimeter PVC. But as you can see, there are Sintrec, Homotex, Celtex, Ion PVC, which is a Grimco brand, and Paylite. They also call it expanded PVC, expanded foam PVC, or a PVC sheet, they may call it. And then, of course, the brands that we just walked through here are some of the more common brands. There are others, and of course, it is manufactured overseas too. Plenty of sheets are made in Asia. Nothing that we buy here at FireSprint, but it is globally available. The difference between brands and PVC, it's something to talk about just a little bit. Some plastics, they don't try. I don't feel like, from my perspective, I don't feel like that the manufacturers try and differentiate themselves as much. In PVC, we do notice more differentiation in the sheets. The sheen and the density of the sheet does change a fair bit, and I don't notice that personally. I don't notice that as much with other materials. So most of the PVC, frankly, all the PVC we buy is manufactured here in the USA. And then it's the industry generally accepts PVC as a standard substrate. But the manufacturers, again, they do try and differentiate themselves. In general, though, the difference between the brands is fairly negligible, especially after we put ink on it and cut it and everything else. The biggest density, again, is the surface. The biggest difference is the density and the surface finish of the sheet. The more air that's injected into a sheet, so the way they save costs, so there are generally economy, and the manufacturers don't hide this. They tell you straight up what the density is because you can weigh a sheet. But generally, the lower the cost of the sheet, the more air is in that manufacturing, that expanded foam process sheet. So it becomes a lighter sheet, which is good in some respects, but it also tends to be a not quite as rigid or maybe not quite as strong or as durable. But that's, from my experience, tends to be the biggest difference between the various sheets. So, industry-wide availability, PVC has seen some real challenges in late 21 and then into 2022. We've seen some of the biggest shifts in pricing and the biggest changes in availability. Current lead time is coming down. It's getting better from maybe 4 to 6 weeks. But I mean, PVC lead time was a week or two back in 2019 and 2020. And now it's, up to 4 to 6 weeks. And it was for a while there, 12 weeks or more. And it is important to know that PVC is available as thin as 1 millimeter. At least this expanded foam sheet, I have seen it as thin as 1 millimeter. Most manufacturers list 1 millimeter as their thinnest gauge, and then all the way up to 25 millimeters. 25 millimeters, almost an inch. So it's a pretty thick sheet. White is by far the most common color, but it is available in a wide range of colors. Black's also very common, especially when it comes to structural uses like the behind displays and things like that. At FireSprint, we offer printable white. There's a little graphic there of our website for the PVC. And we stock 2, 3, and 6 millimeter currently. We have stocked 1 millimeter in the past, but it's so close to 060 styrene and 040 styrene that we stopped stocking it. Just because generally one can be used interchangeably for the other. PVC does have some advantages over styrene and vice versa, though. A 50 by 99 sheet is what we stock. We do stock a 2 millimeter 4 by 8 or 48 by 96. And we stock the oversized sheet so that we can do a full bleed, like 24 by 24 or 24 by 18 and still have room on the edges of the sheet to actually produce the sign. For us, any of these sheet sizes that we keep in inventory is between 1 and 200 sheets. And we generally have more that's readily available that we can get quickly. We do UV digital flatbed print it. It gets about a 1 to 2 year outdoor lifespan. PVC does have a longer lifespan than styrene. I think I'll mention that again. Available finishing for PVC, we can knife cut or route simple shapes. We can put grommets through it all the way up to 6 millimeter. We can grommet 6 millimeter PVC. Of course, we can punch, cut, or drill holes. And then we use adhesive foam squares, pretty common, or add an easel back so we can make kind of a tabletop display using the easel back. So here's some common applications for the PVC. 2 millimeter PVC, we see that mostly in point of purchase and retail displays. There's the Windmaster sign right there that is common with. Pump toppers, really common for 2 millimeter PVC. Auto plates, we do our auto plates out of 2 millimeter PVC. Generally higher volume auto plates, dealer level auto plates are done out of polyethylene or like a paperboard for various reasons. But the PVC is something that we stock, and so we offer that 2 millimeter PVC in an auto plate form. And that works well, particularly for lower volumes of them, up to a couple of hundred or so. That's where we excel at FireSprint. 3 millimeter PVC, point of purchase, retail displays, of course. Semi-permanent posters, so something where you might put a poster on a wall, you might use 3 millimeter or even 2 millimeter PVC, and it'll be quite a bit more permanent than a paper poster. Tabletop easel backs, very common. We do those all the time. 8.5 by 11 or something. Put an easel back on the back of it, and then it's a tabletop display. 6 millimeter PVC. Almost all the 6 millimeter PVC we do is real estate signage, but we do see it used in store fixtures. And then, of course, we do a bunch of golf paddles that say "Quiet, please" and things like that. So they're very similar to our corrugated plastic auction paddles and rally fans, but we do some out of PVC for a little more finished look. The nice advantage about PVC is that on the edges of it, if as opposed to corrugated plastic, the edges are solid, and so it gives you a clean white look all the way across. You don't see the flutes or anything like that, like you would with some sort of corrugated paperboard or cardboard or corrugated plastic. Some tips for using PVC. PVC is measured in millimeters. In the sign industry, there isn't really a standard for the boards we use. Some of it's millimeters, some of it's inches, some of it's mils, some of it's, which mils are a form of inches, but PVC is always measured in millimeters. I've very rarely will see PVC measured anything else. Keep in mind, though, that 6 millimeter PVC is very close to a 1/4 inch. and of course 3 millimeter PVC, very close to 1/8 of an inch. So I will hear people using that term from time to time, but I've never heard the manufacturers use that term when they're actually extruding it. Complex custom shapes may need to be routed. Some shapes may not be suitable for our production methods. Just something to keep in mind, especially if it gets really intricate or really complex. A lot of inside deep grooves and things like that can be difficult. If 2 millimeter PVC is too thick for the application, we would suggest styrene. We have 060 styrene, which is about 1.5 millimeters, or 040 styrene, which is 1 millimeter thick. PVC has a longer outdoor life than styrene and is more UV resistant. So that's just something to keep in mind. Styrene will yellow and crack over time. PVC does not. So if the finish or the surface of the PVC makes sense and the cost, it tends to be a little bit more expensive than styrene. If the cost is acceptable, then PVC does have a longer outdoor life. It won't yellow in the sun as quickly. Note the slight texture of PVC. And then also something that's kind of unfortunate about PVC is it is not easy to recycle, but more and more companies are trying to use it. PVC is plastic number 3. Just because there's a recycling symbol on something doesn't mean that it's actually recyclable. It just gives you an idea of the plastic content. So, but there are deck materials being made out of PVC. Again, like I said, it does last outside for a long time, so it's very capable of being able to be recycled into decking materials or railroad ties, things like that. You'll just have to check with your local recycling centers to see if it's something that you can recycle. Because of its solid core, we don't stock any sort of stands for PVC, so that's important to remember. If somebody asks, do you have a stand for PVC? Well, it's a little bit like asking, do you have a stand for this sheet of plywood? Well, not really. I mean, yes, we can make things. There's things that can be fabricated. Not us here at FireSprint, but someone could do that, or they can just be bolted to things. But of course, we can always use the foam squares and things like that to attach it to a wall. 6 millimeter PVC will fit nicely into a slide-in style real estate frame. Again, not something we stock, but they're very common. Grimco sells them. A lot of the big manufacturers sell a slide-in style real estate frame where it has about a 1/4 inch gap to accept a 1/4 inch sign. That 6 millimeter PVC fits really nicely in those generally. Our 010 PVC is another product that we stock here at FireSprint. It is not the same. It happens to be made out of PVC, but it's basically an entirely different product, entirely different use. It's not really something that we bring into the conversation when we're talking about PVC boards. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time. I hope you found this insightful. If you have questions, feel free to email me, gene@firesprint.com, or reach out to us, support@firesprint.com, 888-509-7446. Thanks. Bye.